Cargo is primarily delivered through hub and spoke distribution. Packages are collected at many locations and flown to carrier hubs where cargo is sorted and loaded for flight to smaller airports near destinations. Hubs handle a great deal of cargo air traffic and feature huge overnight sorting operations. Like air carriers, air cargo operators maintain a fleet mix to satisfy their needs for time-sensitive delivery. Due to the sheer volume at any given fleet mix, individual cargo carriers are the best source for information on their specific fleet. The two largest cargo carriers, FedEx and UPS, have developed specific ARFF training media for their fleets. Much of the information they provide can be applied to understand generic cargo aircraft information. UPS is also a member of the ARFF Working Group and conducts an active training program for ARFF departments in the U.S. and around the world. The sessions cover crew and cockpit procedures, cargo operations, aircraft configurations, and ARFF best practices. Work directly with the individual carriers operating at your airport. Hands-on training and demonstrations with cargo carrier personnel is a valuable training tool and absolutely vital in regards to emergency planning. The cockpit of a Boeing 757-200 series aircraft can be accessed through the L1 door and the pilot's window on the right side. In the UPS configuration, seating capacity is 6 occupants. The flight deck of a Boeing 747 is on the upper deck and can be accessed through the crew and service door on the right side, the overhead escape hatch, or the L1 entry door located on the main deck. 747s can accommodate 8 to 12 occupants, and some have additional exits near the rear of the upper deck. The cockpits of the Airbus A300-600F series aircraft can be accessed through the L1 door and the 2 operable cockpit windows with emergency descent devices. The seating capacity in the UPS configuration is 7 occupants. The cockpit of an MD-11F series aircraft can be accessed through the L1 passenger door, the R1 service door, or a designated chop-out area in the cockpit clear-view window. Seating capacity in the UPS configuration is 7 occupants. Some larger aircraft may have seating modules and/or crew rest modules. Boeing 747s are designed with overhead sleeping modules. Boeing 777s, DC-10s, MD-10s, and MD-11s have sleeping berths and/or seating modules located aft of the cockpit. The MD-11 sleeping berth will block the L1 door if extended. The 747 berths are in the aft crown. Configurations may vary depending on the distance from the bulkhead. Most aircraft are equipped with communications between these modules and the cockpit. ARFF crews must be familiar with each configuration providing service at their airport. In addition to the cockpit, any of these areas may be occupied during an accident or incident. In addition to the crew, there may be additional lives on board a cargo aircraft. A supernumerary is an occupant of an aircraft who is not part of the flight crew, including animal handlers or airline personnel not part of the crew. Lavatories are available to crew and supernumerary riders. Supernumerary riders may have an interphone to the cockpit. You may also find modules containing racehorses or circus animals. Livestock are usually accompanied by supernumerary handlers. Depending on the aircraft, livestock modules may be located fore or aft of all positions. Many cargo aircraft in use today have been converted from passenger aircraft. On those aircraft, the L1 and R1 doors may still be available and may have escape slides. However, cargo aircraft are not required to have contrasting color outlines around passenger doors. Other than the primary cockpit entrance, remaining doors may be inoperable once the aircraft is converted to a freighter. Aircraft that were originally built as cargo aircraft rather than converted from passenger configurations may not have R1 doors. Clearly, there are no overwing exits. Some L1 doors may not have escape slides. Those that do not will have inertia reels. Aircraft that have been converted from passenger to cargo configurations may have the same primary exits, but overwing and secondary exits may be paneled over. Mid-cabin doors could be bolted closed, as they are never needed. They are painted over with no outline, as required for a passenger aircraft. If there is no power to the aircraft, it may be necessary to operate the doors manually. On many narrow-body aircraft, like the MD-80 or Boeing 737, this can be a simple procedure. Some narrow-body freighters, like the Boeing 757 and all wide-body aircraft, require a somewhat involved process. In any case, manually opening cargo doors may not be the best course of action. The cargo doors of aircraft that remain upright after landing, especially those with failed landing gear, may be extremely stressed and nearly impossible to open. Attempting to open cargo doors could distract limited ARFF personnel from more pressing tasks. If manual opening is chosen, your cargo carrier, the aircraft manufacturer, and the ARFF database can provide crash charts, which will include detailed descriptions of actions required to open doors manually. After releasing the locks, many of these doors will require inserting a drive into a door opening mechanism to manually open the door. A speed wrench can be used to open these doors, but some doors will require hundreds of revolutions of the wrench. Certain battery-operated speed wrenches can be useful in this process. The drive size may range from 1/2 to 3/8 of an inch. Typically, aircraft manufacturers advise against using these tools that operate at greater than 500 RPMs, as higher speeds may burn up the door actuator. Check with your cargo airlines for specific recommendations on the best tools to carry. Small cargo aircraft operated by independent carriers or feeder aircraft operated by the large carriers may be entirely hand-loaded. Cargo bays may have cargo nets to separate loads or prevent weight shift. These aircraft will have manually operating cargo doors. Cargo containers are loaded onto aircraft with elevators, moved with casters, and locked into place. Cargo is moved in unit load devices, or ULDs, which are often pallets or containers, also known as cans. A single aircraft load can consist of cans, pallets, or other types of ULDs. Each ULD is identified with a unique number consisting of a 3-letter prefix, a 4- or 5-digit serial number, and a 2-character alphanumeric suffix that identifies the ULD's owner. Because ULD numbers appear on the cargo manifest, understanding them can help you visualize an aircraft's interior space. The ULD prefix can be used to look up the ULD's height, which can help determine the piercing locations. ULD reference charts can be obtained from cargo carriers or online. In addition to the ULD number, the position on the aircraft is also identified on the manifest. Each cargo position is numbered from front to rear and may also have left, center, or right designations. A ULD number on the cargo manifest that ends in 4R indicates that the ULD is in the cargo position 4 right. The terminology used to describe belly positions may vary from operator to operator. Some of the common terms identifying cargo bays include MCD, main cargo deck, FLB, forward lower belly, ALB, aft lower belly, ABK, aft bulk area, and BC or BP for bulk compartment or bulk pit, the area behind the aft lower belly where loose bags may be loaded. Any belly positions may be referred to as a pit or compartment. For example, the aft lower belly, or ALB, may also be referred to as the aft lower pit, or ALP. Lower cargo bay ULD positions are also identified by position. Forward bay designations may begin with an F or FLB, and aft bays with an A or ALB. ULD positions are still numbered sequentially, from front to back, and have a suffix R or L to indicate right or left. A1L would indicate the aft bay, position 1 on the left side. FLB2R would indicate the forward lower bay, position 2, right side. Some cargo aircraft may have as many as 4 lower cargo doors. Check with the carrier representative for configuration information. The cargo deck and crew area are separated by either a bulkhead or a barrier net, known as a 9G net, designated to keep cargo from sliding forward into the cockpit bulkhead during emergency maneuvers or crash landings. The distribution of weight is of vital importance, since the position of the center of gravity affects the stability of the airplane. When loading an airplane, the center of gravity must be within a permissible range and remain so during the flight to ensure the stability and maneuverability of the airplane. Cargo carriers may have equipment or accommodations in the ramp to stabilize an aircraft during loading operations. Nose tethers, tail posts, or especially equipped dollies equipped with counterweights may be useful tools to help stabilize an aircraft during emergency operations. Check with the carriers to find out what type of equipment they have and if it can be accessed during an emergency. Cargo being shipped must be properly labeled. Labels are printed hazard warnings that identify primary and subsidiary risks specific to the material. They also identify handling instructions. Cargo packages may contain dangerous goods, also known as hazardous materials, regulated articles, or restricted articles. By law, shippers must label dangerous goods in accordance with 49 CFR 172.400-450 or IATA DG rules. Carriers must verify that packages with declared dangerous goods are labeled appropriately. Labels identify the hazard class of the labeled material. There are 9 hazard classes. Hazard Class 9 covers materials that present a hazard during transportation but do not meet the definition of any other hazard class. Firefighters may not immediately think of these materials as dangerous. For example, dry ice is a Hazard Class 9 material according to both the U.S. Department of Transportation and the International Air Transport Association. Dry ice is hazardous during transportation because it releases large volumes of carbon dioxide gas. This gas can be exploded if packaged in an airtight container. It can also cause suffocation if released in a confined space. As a cryogenic material, dry ice also causes severe frostbite upon contact with the skin. In addition, dry ice is often used to preserve biological material that may be hazardous itself. Magnetized materials also fall into Hazard Class 9 because they can cause compass deflection or interfere with navigation equipment. No magnetized materials that can cause compass deviation at a distance of 7 feet or more can be transported by air. Hazard Class 9 materials are common in cargo operations, and our firefighters should be aware of these hazards. Additional handling labels may indicate cargo aircraft-only materials, magnetized materials, and packages containing liquids. 14 CFR Part 139.319J requires that each ARFF vehicle be equipped with a North American Emergency Response Guide, commonly referred to as the ERG. The ERG is distributed by the Department of Transportation and is available from the Office of Hazardous Materials website, or by calling 202-366-4900. The ERG is an excellent reference for first responders during the initial phase of a hazardous materials incident. The ERG enables ARFF personnel to look up hazard classes, proper shipping names, and other information about dangerous cargo listed on the cargo manifest. Every piece of cargo on a cargo aircraft is listed in the cargo manifest. An additional Dangerous Goods Manifest, or DG Manifest, identifies all hazardous cargo. The Notification to Captain, or NOTOC, is a document that informs the captain of any dangerous goods. Firefighters must know how to quickly obtain and understand manifests and NOTOCs. NOTOCs are not carried in the same location on every aircraft, but are commonly found in seat back pockets in the cockpit or on the lavatory door just outside the cockpit. If able, the captain will leave the aircraft with the NOTOC, but emergency circumstances often do not permit this. If manifests and other important paperwork are not immediately accessible, you can contact the air carrier to obtain the information. Work with the cargo air carrier at your airport to determine the best numbers to call and the fastest method of getting the information to your command post. These 24-hour direct numbers were provided by carriers as point of contact and sources of information for incident commanders during an emergency. Bear in mind that the DG Manifest only describes declared goods. Some shippers may illegally ship dangerous goods without notifying the cargo carrier. Let's look at a typical Dangerous Goods Manifest. This is a manifest for Flight 1463, which is flying this flight leg on the 7th day of the month. The full date of this flight leg is April 7th, 2009. The flight originated in Memphis, and its destination is Atlanta. The aircraft is an Airbus A310-200H configured for 22 cargo positions. The tail number of the aircraft is November 431 Foxtrot Echo. Next, the manifest lists the hazard class, description, and weight of each dangerous good carried. The list of goods is divided into 2 categories, accessible or inaccessible. Accessible dangerous goods are loaded in positions accessible to the flight crew. Inaccessible dangerous goods are not accessible to the flight crew. The first section of the DG Manifest provides a snapshot of the dangerous goods on board. For each ULD, the dangerous goods position summary identifies the position, ULD number, and the hazard class, description, and amount of dangerous goods contained in the ULD. Each ULD also has its own ULD DG Manifest, which lists the individual dangerous goods carried in the ULD. The UN/ID number identifies each specific dangerous good. You can use the UN/ID number to look up dangerous goods in the ERG or other hazmat guide. The ICAO drill code also identifies dangerous goods and can be looked up in the ICAO Emergency Response Guidance for aircraft incidents involving dangerous goods. The listed proper shipping name of the dangerous good should match the name associated with the UN/ID number in the ERG. The ERG entry for a given UN/ID number provides the information related to fire or explosion risks, health hazards, public safety information, protective clothing required, evacuation measures, and emergency response guidance for fires, spills or leaks, and first aid. The hazard class is listed next. Maleic anhydride is a Class 8 corrosive material. The shipment's weight in kilograms is also listed. To convert kilos to pounds, multiply the number of kilos by 2.2. In this case, 4.9 kilos equals 10.78 pounds. The number of pieces of the dangerous good is listed next. One piece can refer to one box, one bag, one can, etc. Finally, the ULD-DG manifest lists the shipper's name or reference number, as well as an emergency telephone number provided by the shipper. This number is a critical contact for specific information about their dangerous goods shipment. Material Safety Data Sheets, or MSDSs, provide more detailed information about individual products. Many MSDSs can be found online by searching for the proper shipping name. They can also be requested from the shipper at the emergency telephone number on the DG manifest. Properly packaged and handled, dangerous goods will remain stable and safe. However, direct flame exposure, heat, damage to packaging, and even the force of water streams can release hazardous materials. Once released, each product presents its own hazards, along with the hazards caused by products mixing together. In addition to dangerous cargo, many components of the aircraft itself can release additional hazardous materials during combustion. Firefighters must be careful to evaluate the DG manifest and situation and work with the airline, shippers, and hazmat technicians to manage dangerous goods. Once you have an understanding of how cargo is packed, loaded, and labeled, you can apply ARFF training, tactics, and strategies to cargo incidents. As with any ARFF incident, accurately assessing the incident is critical. Decisions made in this stage set the tone for the rest of the incident. There are several factors you must consider. Starting with the initial call to report the emergency, communications should factor heavily into your assessment. Communications best practices include establishing command, assigning roles, and using predetermined radio frequencies and call signs. Is the aircraft intact? Is it in one piece? Is it up on all of its landing gear? Are the doors and emergency exits open or closed? Is the aircraft on the pavement or off in the soft surface? Has it impacted any structures or obstructions? Wind, weather, and terrain are important external considerations. Are there any collateral fires involving brush, structures, or other aircraft? Visible smoke, fire, and spilled fuel will help determine your initial actions. Communicating with the flight crew over a discrete emergency frequency can provide a great deal of information about conditions on board and the crew's intentions. This type of information can help ARFF units anticipate the intentions of the crew and be in position to assist. Communications at this stage can also activate mutual aid response and dispatch of additional airport and airline resources, saving precious time. Communications with other ARFF assets can combine observations from other vantage points and coordinate initial actions. Communicating with the control tower is critical to safe movement of ARFF vehicles, coordinating approaches to the aircraft, and arranging as needed. You should also consider the intentions and actions of the crew who may have evacuated the aircraft before you arrive, or may be contemplating evacuation. The information you gather during assessment will directly affect the incident action plan, including the initial actions required and the positioning and use of ARFF vehicles. At small airports with only one or two vehicles, apparatus should be positioned to protect the exit being used by the occupants and maintain a safe escape path from the aircraft. For airports with multiple assets, consider matching specialized apparatus components with anticipated tactical needs. For example, to investigate a fire warning light on a high-mounted engine, you might use a vehicle with a high-reach extendable turret or aerial. If you suspect a fire in the avionics compartment and you have a vehicle with a clean agent handline, position that vehicle within the effective operational range of the handline. It is often difficult to reposition vehicles once committed. Anticipating the needs of the event will contribute to effective operations. Protecting the occupants is the highest priority. They need to be relocated to a safe area, or the space that they occupy must be made safe. ARFF crews should be prepared to assist in evacuation and aid any injured. Occupants may need medical assistance and should be monitored for their safety. Ideally, the occupants can evacuate themselves. If they are unable, initial efforts must be to keep fire and hazards away from the occupied areas until resources are available for rescue. Use foam streams to initially protect occupied portions of the aircraft. A foam blanket should be maintained on pooled fuel under the aircraft. There are 6 steps to secure the aircraft from the cockpit. ARFF personnel should check all 6 and perform any needed actions. Once you have entered the cockpit and verified that the occupants are safe, the aircraft should be secured. The parking brake should be engaged. The throttles should be set to idle. The fuel shutoff levers should be switched to off. If the incident involves an engine fire, fire handles should be pulled out or full forward. The batteries should be switched off. Safety is critical. A system for monitoring scene safety and maintaining firefighter accountability must be established during initial actions. All emergency personnel in the hot zone must be fully protected with PPE at all times. Depending on the hazards present, air monitoring and radiation monitoring may need to be conducted. All results should be recorded. It may also be necessary to evacuate downwind areas. Efforts should be made to protect or monitor runoff into storm drains or areas that could affect groundwater or wetlands. Command must be established upon declaration of the Alert 3 or upon arrival at the scene of the accident or fire. The command post is initially established at the location of the incident commander. The incident commander will need the support of multiple agencies, departments, and companies. An airline representative is a critical member of the team assembled at the command post. The representative must have the authority, knowledge, and resources to make decisions for the airline. It is important to maintain the stability of the aircraft. Wheels should be chocked if it is safe to do so. When aircraft maintenance arrives, they may have pins to secure landing gear. Maintain a safety area underneath the aircraft. You do not know whether the emergency landing damaged the landing gear or whether the load is shifted. Tail tipping is a very real danger. No one should be allowed under the aircraft unless absolutely necessary, and then only when it is determined to be safe. If the aircraft is still up on its gear, load and balance are prime considerations. Impact may have shifted the load, or an aircraft not fully on the pavement may be sinking into soft terrain. Shiny metal on landing gear struts is a reference point that should be monitored. 1 to 4 inches of a shiny metal on a large frame aircraft strut is normal. This amount will vary depending on the type of aircraft and its load. Tracking changes in the visible amount of shiny metal on the strut is a good way to monitor shifts in the aircraft's load and balance. Checking the struts will also help determine whether agent you apply is affecting the balance. Monitoring aircraft balance is an excellent opportunity to draw upon the expertise of an airline representative. He or she should stay upwind, outside the hot zone, and may need binoculars. Airline representatives can also call upon mechanics and load masters for guidance and expertise on aircraft load and balance during firefighting operations. With ARFF resources on scene and occupants evacuated, the priority shifts to extinguishing the fire. Incident commanders must carefully weigh the risks of every subsequent task. There is no reason to put the lives of firefighters at risk to save an aircraft and cargo that have likely already been declared total losses by the insurance company. However, the fire does need to be extinguished so the incident can be cleared and the airport can return to business as usual. The first firefighting decision concerns the fire's location and extent of involvement. If the aircraft is broken up, or if the fire has already breached the fuselage, there may be places to introduce agent and allow the fire to vent. If the aircraft is intact and has not vented and all of the occupants have been removed, the situation is entirely different. You will probably find that all the cargo doors are closed, while emergency doors and cockpit windows are open. At this point, one of the options may be to attempt to slow down the propagation of fire by simply reducing the amount of oxygen that the fire has available. This may be an appropriate action if the fire is not visible and if adequate assets and resources are not in place for an immediate fire attack. Consider closing open doors and windows. If there are no breaches in the fuselage, this may retard the fire. Bear in mind that if the fire is still finding adequate oxygen, a backdraft could occur when reopening the aircraft. FLIR cameras can provide a heat signature for the aircraft and detect any significant heat sources on board. If the FLIR shows a fire bloom that does not indicate the fire is starved of oxygen and an interior attack is necessary, the high-reach extendable turret is the safest way to apply agent. ARFF Department standard operating guidelines should combine accepted fire behavior patterns, prudent safety procedures, expert assistance by cargo carriers, and available tools and resources to provide recommended options for various scenarios. Once the position is known, you can use the cargo and ULD position manifests to identify the burning materials and any other cargo of concern on the aircraft. This is not to say that fire attack should be delayed to review manifests or other information in the note talk. As ARFF personnel arrive at positions in the command post, the incident commander should review all available information and take action as appropriate. If the ULDs in question are near a cargo door and access can be gained quickly to fight the fire or remove the container, you may be able to minimize damage to the aircraft and remaining freight on board. This is just one of the possibilities to be considered while evaluating options at the Unified Command Post. Our firefighters should be familiar with the normal operating systems and procedures for opening and closing cargo doors on an aircraft that still has power. In some circumstances, ARFF crews may need to open cargo doors without aircraft power. If the aircraft body has been stressed or warped, this may not be possible. Your cargo carrier representative is the best source of information on all methods of opening and closing cargo doors and which tools are best to use. If the ULDs in question are not easily accessible, opening the door prematurely could rapidly accelerate the fire and cause additional damage. Left on its own, a fire in a closed fuselage with sufficient air to fuel combustion will typically breach the fuselage roof immediately above itself. If we open a door, the fire will travel toward the opening, seeking out oxygen. In many circumstances, opening a door will not actually permit access to the fire area. We know from basic fire science that fuel, heat, oxygen, and chain reaction are the 4 factors necessary for fire. Removing any one will prevent, suppress, or control a fire. You may have already been able to reduce the flow of oxygen by closing open doors. The best way to extinguish a cargo fire is to attack it directly. A coordinated mutual aid response is scaled to the incident and must be initiated immediately. ARFF departments should have a plan developed that outlines the resources and actions necessary to attack the fire. The plan should include a safe means of access, if needed, such as mobile stairs or aerial platforms. Some airports may not have the resources to launch such an attack quickly. Applying water to the fuselage above fires detected with a FLIR camera will remove heat and significantly delay burn-through of the fuselage. Assign FLIR cameras to monitor the aircraft's heat signature from both sides if possible. If the heat bloom gets smaller or does not increase in intensity, you have bought precious time to gather resources and develop a prudent incident action plan. Though we cannot see inside the aircraft when we are fighting an onboard fire, we are far from operating blindly. We have a great deal of knowledge, expertise, and science to draw upon. Piercing nozzles, either handheld or mounted on a high-reach extendable turret, are an excellent method for introducing agent to a fire inside the aircraft. The effectiveness of high-reach extendable turrets, or HRETs, piercing nozzles, or handheld piercing nozzles, depends on their ability to discharge agent into the area involved in fire. There are 2 general strategies for using piercing technology to introduce agent into a cargo aircraft with an interior fire. But both of these strategies are complemented by the ability to assess the heat signature of the cargo bay with a forward-looking infrared camera or handheld thermal imaging camera. Discharging agent directly into the burning cargo may have an immediate effect in controlling or extinguishing the fire. Piercing a cargo container is most effective when the piercing tip extends 1/2 to 2/3 into the width of the container. Discharging agent into the space around the burning cargo container may interrupt the thermal column, provide cooling, and then allow the agent to reach the burning material through the breached ULD. Regardless of which strategy you may employ, the best places to pierce an aircraft are generally the 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock positions, as seen from the aircraft's nose looking back toward the tail. For piercing a belly hold, the best place to pierce is the 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock positions. ARFF departments should be familiar with the capabilities, limitations, and standard operating procedures of their piercing tools. The type of aircraft, the type and size of cargo containers, and the load configuration will all affect which tools you select and where you choose to pierce. Your cargo carriers can help you determine the specific needs for the fleet mix and configuration of aircraft using your airport. Narrow-body cargo aircraft vary in width, but none are wider than 13 feet. They typically have minimal space between the wall and the fuselage and the wall of the cargo container. This leaves little space for a firefighter, but provides the best case for piercing into a cargo container. A standard 22 to 34-inch piercing tip will access cargo containers on most narrow-body cargo aircraft if the piercing is made from the correct side of the aircraft. The typical configuration of most narrow-body aircraft, such as Boeing 727s, 737s, and 757s, is one full row of contour containers. The distance between the exterior of the fuselage and the wall of the cargo container is approximately 12 inches. A standard piercing tip from an HRET will end up with a significant portion inside the container. The configuration and loading of a Boeing 757 are similar to the 727. The 757 carries more containers, but the piercing depth requirements are the same. Some narrow-body aircraft might be loaded with full-width containers, which occupy the space of 2 containers and fill the full width of the aircraft. If a fire occurs in a full-width container and the selected tactic calls for piercing and introduction of agent into the container, a standard HRET piercing tip might be far less effective than in a smaller can. Because of the larger size of the container, we may not reach the part of the container on fire. Extension tubes or handheld piercing nozzles may increase the ability to reach the fire with agent. It is not practical to expect to reach any point in any container on any aircraft. The overall goal of using penetrating tools is to reach a point where the agent being discharged can be effective in controlling and extinguishing the fire. The width of a wide-body aircraft varies from about 16.5 feet to over 23 feet. When dealing with a fire in a cargo container in a wide-body aircraft, introducing agent directly into the burning container becomes more challenging. Airbus wide-body aircraft typically use offset configurations that put cargo containers fairly close to the fuselage on the right side, usually about 17 inches away. On the left side, separation can range from 18 to 53 inches. In several cargo configurations, piercing the left side of an A300 with a standard piercing tip on a high-reach extendable turret will leave you unable to reach a burning cargo container. On a Boeing 777, a standard piercing tip on an HRET will not likely be effective unless the extension tubes have been added. The distance from the fuselage to the cargo container could be up to 39.2 inches. The same is true for DC-10 and MD-11 aircraft, with a distance of 20 inches between standard cargo containers and the fuselage, and up to 31 inches with full-width containers. Wide-body aircraft typically have much larger open space above the cargo. Piercing and discharging in this area provides an unobstructed space to get the full benefit of the spray pattern from the nozzle. Some cargo carriers are installing active fire detection and fire suppression systems in their aircraft, or ULDs. Some ULDs designated to carry dangerous goods may have ports to plug in a line from a fire suppression system. These ULDs will be loaded to be accessible to the flight crew. FedEx is installing fire suppression systems in many of its MD-11 and 777 aircraft on international routes. If the system's sensors detect heat in a cargo container, an overhead injector pierces the container and fills it with firefighting foam. The fire is extinguished within several minutes. FedEx uses a second system for palletized cargo. A fire-retardant blanket is wrapped around a pallet to restrict oxygen flow. The blanket keeps a fire smoldering for 3 to 4 hours, long enough to allow even the longest flights to land safely. UPS is evaluating all developing technologies and regulations to apply to its existing fleets of aircraft. Check with the cargo carriers at your airport to see which systems they're using. Belly cargo holds pose additional challenges. Belly cargo holds have their own cargo access stores. The inside of the fuselage bulkhead is squared off with an interior bulkhead, separating the cargo compartment from the fuselage and increasing piercing depths to the belly hold. On an A300, for example, the distance from the outside of the fuselage in the belly hold to the inner bulkhead of the freight compartment is 43 inches. On a Boeing 747, it is as much as 57.5 inches. Clearly, knowing the lengths of your piercing tools and being proficient in their operation is crucial to an effective operation. The usable length of an HRET tip varies depending on the model, which extension tubes can be mounted, and whether accessories have reduced the usable piercing length. Handheld piercing nozzles are available in lengths up to 6 feet. They may pierce fuselage skin manually, or with water or air pressure, or when struck with a maul. Bear in mind that these handheld nozzles will typically discharge between 95 and 125 gallons per minute, compared to the HRET piercing nozzles that discharge 250 gallons per minute. At this point in the incident, ARFF crews are on the scene. The crew has been evacuated, the aircraft is as stable as possible, and the initial assessment has been completed. The incident commander must gather a good deal of critical information: what's burning, where it's burning, the effect on the fire of any initial actions, and the piercing distance required to reach the fire. If it has been determined that piercing the aircraft is appropriate, certain rules of thumb can be applied to guide that activity. On a cargo aircraft, we may want to penetrate the fuselage at the longitudinal center of the heat plume, or at the 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock position relative to the fuselage when viewed head-on from the nose. These positions are slightly higher than the recommended locations for passenger aircraft. The idea is to enter the container closer to the top, where there is more likely to be a void, to allow water or agent to disperse, or to enter the void above the container directly above the fire. In some configurations of narrow-body aircraft, the space above the cargo containers is so small that we may not be sure if our penetration has entered the container or the space above it. Discharging water or agent through the piercing tip into the can will help cool the interior of the container. Continued discharge should saturate the goods in the container as the water or agent makes its way to the bottom. Discharging agent into the space around the burning cargo container will cool the space, interrupt the thermal column, and perhaps prevent the fire from spreading or burning through the fuselage. Bear in mind that most cargo bays are fitted with a smooth liner material. When exposed to heat, this liner becomes flexible. A piercing tip can easily stretch the heated liner instead of piercing it, which can prevent firefighting agent from reaching the actual fire. Upon contact with the wall of the cargo container, the piercing tip will easily pass through the liner and the container. If the liner stretches and does not come up against the cargo container wall, the agent discharge will be trapped between the liner and the fuselage wall. The effectiveness of your initial firefighting efforts needs to be evaluated. Monitor the fuselage skin for effects of heat and flame impingement. Monitor the thermal signature through your FLIR cameras or thermal imagers. If you have pierced in the area of the heat plume, but the agent isn't reaching the fire's heat signature will not decrease. This is a signal to reevaluate your piercing strategy. Monitoring the heat plume on the FLIR camera is the best gauge of the effectiveness of your efforts. Additional piercings may be required to reach all areas involved in fire. If the heat signature disappears, continue to monitor the location. After 2 hours of no heat signature, it should be safe to open the aircraft with minimal threat of reignition. The decision to enter the aircraft and through which door should be a collaborative decision made by the stakeholders in the command post. The incident commander will also have to declare the aircraft safe before allowing airline personnel inside what was the hot zone. All personnel making initial entries should be protected with full PPE, including SCBA. Never open a door of an aircraft that has been on fire without adequate protection for those making the entry, including ARFF vehicles in position and charged hand lines. Removing cargo containers to gain access to involved containers must be performed by or under the direction of qualified airline representatives. Any container removal should also be approved by FAA or NTSB officials on site. As the cleanup and investigation stages begin, continue to provide ventilation at the incident site and monitor air quality. Records of meter recordings will become part of your incident report, which will be made available to investigators. Actual ARFF incidents involving cargo planes can provide invaluable examples of how to apply tactics and strategies in the real world. Our first case study involves a UPS plane that encountered trouble in the air.
The event first unfolded at cruise altitude of 35,000 feet. I was a flying pilot. I detected a light odor of smoke. Nothing visible in the cockpit. no annunciators indicating we really had something on board. Now, in the back of my mind, we had 100-knot tailwind, and I thought, well, did we really fly through maybe a forest fire smoke that's in the atmosphere, or is there something dire going on board that we should be concerned about? And just the conservative nature of my flying, instead of pulling the throttles all the way back to idle, I elected to leave a little extra speed in there. By the time we had gotten to about 12 miles as a crow flies to Philadelphia Airport, we were on a left base for 27 right. And it was a beautiful night. It was clear, light winds. And to me, from this point, is when the event unfolded almost like somebody threw an angry bobcat in the cockpit, because immediately smoke started coming in from the aisle and around from behind the engineer's panel, and the cargo smoke annunciator lit up. Immediately the engineer announced cargo smoke.
On the ground in Philadelphia, ARFF crews awaited the UPS plane's arrival.
There was actually conflicting information with the incident. The aircraft was given permission to land on our longest runway, which is 27 left. So our crews take a standby location awaiting its landing, and the aircraft eventually landed on 27 right, which was a closer runway for them coming in. The initial call was a smoke indicator light in the cargo area, and once they touched down, there was a actual visible smoke in the cockpit area as well. Engine 78's lieutenant entered the cockpit, and due to the placement of the smoke curtain, he didn't feel any heat, although he was experiencing some smoke. Made an effort to find the cargo manifest and wasn't able to locate it, so he exited the aircraft. The operations on the exterior aircraft, directed by the shift captain at this time, was to ventilate the aircraft by opening as many portals, wing exits, doors that was possible. He assigned one firefighter to the cargo door, other firefighters to the left and right rear doors, and was working on figuring out where to position hose streams and place the high-reach extendable turret based on the heat indicators that he was observing. Sector chiefs decide that they want to get hand lines up on the wings, and so they bring inch and 3/4 water line up to the left and right wings. They access the hatches and start to place streams into the aircraft. This is right around the time I get on location. I meet with the incident commander, let him know of my arrival, and explain to him my concerns about the cargo, the fact that it's a completely enclosed environment, and even if we can open it up, there's no way we're getting in it because the containers are from forward to aft of the aircraft. And I explained to him my concern would be the main cargo door and an attempt to offload a couple of containers in the front of the aircraft so that we can get a foothold on the aircraft and potentially save and salvage some of the cargo as well.
A firefighter attempted to open the door manually.
The initial handle that he attempted to open, thinking that it was the only sequence in opening the door, failed to result in the door opening. Thinking that we couldn't open it manually, we moved into a forcible entry mode. Our special ops and heavy rescue companies attempted various cutting with saws. They cut away the aluminum skin, exposing the locking mechanisms, attempted to cut through them with the saw, didn't have much success with that, went into acetylene torches and tried to burn them through.
All attempts at forcible entry failed to successfully open the cargo door.
The fire was starting to grow in intensity. We were starting to see heavy heat indicators in the tail section. We were concerned about collapse of the tail. Once burn through started to occur. However, once burn through started to occur, I think that the fire became a little more localized. The hand lines on the wings helped to kind of contain it to the rear of the aircraft, and on the right side, the nozzle was still in operation. There was situations on the wings based on the weather conditions. It was at a freezing temperature. The wings were starting to ice up. The firefighters operating on the wings were having a difficult time keeping their footing. Hose line was starting to accumulate around the aircraft. We were getting a significant pooling of water. We were starting to get freezing of the water. Our concerns were for the slipperiness around the aircraft, so we asked the operations if they could bring in some salt or some urea to de-ice the area, which was certainly done. Made getting around a little easier. Once the burn-through occurred, we were able to gain access, and some of the cargo had actually consumed itself by this time. The containers were melting down. We were able to get a hand line on the interior of the aircraft and knock the fire down at that point in time. And the whole duration from the incident being initiated to fire under control was around a 4-hour duration. And then we started to try and return to normal operations.
One of the benefits that the safety board had in the Philadelphia accident was having the Philadelphia Airport ARFF a part of our investigation. As a party to our investigation, they were able to provide a lot of expertise to us, let us know about the information that they had, some of the things that they might have needed, and to be able to really look back with us at what things could have been improved. We saw a number of things that could have been improved. Number one, making sure that all Part 139 airports were prepared for a cargo event. That means being familiar with cargo aircraft, how they're configured, where the exits would be, making sure that external exits were marked. We know that on passenger aircraft, the firefighting crews know where those exits are, but we found in this accident that they didn't have those same visual cues on the outside of the hull of the aircraft. We've made a recommendation about that. We know that there are challenges in operating equipment, in getting on scene, and knowing what you're faced with. Our investigations want to make sure that the next time this happens, that someone is in a better position. We learned a lot of lessons from this accident investigation, and I think with the support of the Philadelphia ARFF, participating in our public hearing, participating in our investigation, I think we came to a lot better solution about what needed to be done.
Let's review the best practices demonstrated during this incident. The elements of an incident can change quickly. The runway change moments before the plane landed is an excellent example of this. Effective communication with the tower, the flight crew, and other ARFF personnel is vital. Chief Flanagan carefully weighed the risks of the incident and acted accordingly. While positioning his team, he considered the possibility of collapse and kept the risks of human life as low as possible. While efforts to open the cargo door proved ineffective, the fire was contained with no fatalities. The weather and wind during the incident proved to be a concern. Chief Flanagan wisely made adjustments to deter water and ice accumulation around the aircraft, which could have been highly dangerous. In our second incident, gear collapse on a FedEx aircraft created a dangerous situation.
We had no reason to believe that our landing that afternoon was not going to be a normal landing. We had calm winds, a beautiful day to fly. My first officer was making the landing, and he made a normal landing in every respect. We had rolled out about 2,500 feet. We were in reverse thrust and in the process of slowing the aircraft. And as procedure would have it, he touched the brakes in preparation for applying them. And at that point, when we were under 100 knots on our landing roll, the airplane began to shudder. And at that point, the gear began to collapse and fail. I took control of the airplane, and we were able to bring the airplane to a stop at about taxiway Mike 4. The airplane wanted to veer severely to the left of the runway because of the drag from the collapsed gear and, of course, the wing hitting the ground and the engine hitting the ground and exploding. That created the fire, which we were unaware of except from all of the alerts in the cockpit. We had tremendous warnings in the cockpit for fire, gear collapse, etc. And once we brought the airplane to a stop, we performed our emergency evacuation checklist and shut down the engines, fired all the fire extinguishers, and blew the escape slide and escaped on the upwind side of the aircraft.
The initial call came in on the fire department crash phone that a building was on fire at the terminal. The dispatcher came back and said, we got an actual alert 3, a plane is on fire. Usually I get the type of information of what type of aircraft it is, how many people on board, hazardous material. Usually I have all that information. I can pre-planned what I'm gonna do before I get on the scene. So I was kind of blind. Once I got there, I saw that there was an actual plane on fire, and it was a FedEx cargo plane. So we proceeded down to the plane as close as we could, and I could see two individuals running toward the A1 vehicle. And I talked to the pilot, and she said that everybody was off, and I looked, it was 3 of them. So I asked her what kind of cargo did she have on board as far as hazardous material, and she said that I could call the dispatch and get that, so which I did. At this time, we had fire and flames shooting all around the plane. I instructed A2 to go ahead and use foam and try to put the fire out. I had A3 to position on the opposite side just in case the flame would spread. By that time, we had initial companies still coming because they had upgraded to Alert 3. Now I got 4 truck companies coming, 4 engines, 3 units, 2 battalion chiefs, and a division chief. Now my next plan of action was to set up a command post, make sure that I had set up a perimeter so when the other companies do come, they won't come straight to the scene. They'll have somewhere to stage so we can, if the plane escalate or fuel, something happened that it would blow up or something, that we wouldn't be near the aircraft. After about 2 or 3 minutes with the foam, A2 did knock the fire down. I talked to the air traffic control tower. She told me that there were no hazardous materials on board. By this time, we made sure that all the personnel was off the plane, they was out of harm's way, and we set up a command post. And by that time, I had FedEx agencies there, the airport authority had people there, and so at this time we just set up a command post and make sure that the scene was set up so when NTSB came, they could inspect and see what caused the crash and do their investigation. We have a term on the fire department that we use here that you play the way you practice. I have a good crew, and we do a lot of training and practicing. We try to do something at least once a week, some type of training, aircraft, whether either familiarization, airport familiarization. But the main thing that we practice on is tactics and strategies. What will we do if this happened?
Let's review the best practices demonstrated during this incident. Chief Boyce's diligence regarding communication proved to be vital to the situation. This incident demanded that Chief Boyce survey the condition and position of the plane and then quickly devise a safe and effective strategy to contain the fire and establish a command post and safety zone. Luckily, external conditions proved to be less of a factor in this event, but that doesn't mean they were not considered by Chief Boyce. Remember, external conditions such as wind, weather, and terrain can make an incident like this one even more challenging. In the end, Chief Boyce relied on his training to execute his duties effectively.